you all? We're going to wake up together right now. Hi, my name is Paul Woods. I'm a Los Angeles author, designer, occasional illustrator. I've been in Europe for the past 2 weeks. This is me actually in Italy a few days ago with a bit of a hangover, looking worse for wear. I'm the Chief Creative Officer of Eden Speakerman Los Angeles, and I don't need to explain to you who Eden Speakerman is, maybe, but if I do, it's a company founded by this troublemaker up here, Eric Speakerman, and we're a brand and digital product agency. So today, I'm actually not going to talk so much about Eden Speakerman with you. What I wanted to talk to you about is a poster that Eric designed, and a poster and I suppose what I call a 3-year personal crusade that was inspired when I first moved to the States. So I worked in Berlin for about 4 or 5 years, and wonderful work-life balance, enjoying the culture, and then I moved to America, moved to New York. And of course, the ad agency and the creative world is a little bit different there. So it got me thinking about a poster that hangs in our Los Angeles office. It's a poster that hangs in our Berlin office and all our offices around the world. And I'm in Berlin, so you're probably familiar with this poster that reads, "Don't work for assholes, don't work with assholes." So what's interesting about this poster, and I think, but how many people have seen this poster? Let's have a show of hands. So quite a few. What's really interesting about this, and anyone who has this hanging in a prominent place will probably have, maybe a client. We have like the CMO of a bank or, a startup come in, and they walk up and they go, "What a fucking cool poster." It's like, who wants to work with assholes? Fuck them. They take their little Instagram for their 7 Instagram followers, and the truth is that maybe this person is actually an asshole themselves. So the thing that got me thinking about this topic was, if this idea of not being an asshole, this idea of creative culture, positive culture, is so important, then why is it so rare, especially outside of Northern Europe, especially in the States, in London? And so much so that I started thinking about this topic. I spoke quite a bit about this topic. I put some thoughts down in a book called How to Do Great Work Without Being an Asshole. What I wanted to do today was to share a specific chapter from that book with you and some thoughts around one particular piece. So let's go back to the poster for a second. Don't work for assholes, don't work with assholes. Now, when I've been doing talks in the States, I focus a lot on this piece, don't work with assholes. This is the part that's in our control, right? We can change the culture in our organization. We can fire people maybe that are assholes. We can help our teams work normal hours. What about the top part? What about don't work for assholes? So the question I'd like to pose to us today and to discuss today is, what do we do when we're working with or for assholes? What happens when this asshole is the one that's paying the bills, that's keeping the lights on, that's paying your staff's salary? It's not so black and white. And so this is the topic specifically from the book today that I want to deal with, is the nemesis of all nemesis. Clients. So this is a very nuanced topic, I think, as well. So we talk about not being an asshole, and we talk about working with clients. And what's interesting now, especially for us working in agencies, is actually the client that sits across the table from us is incredibly talented too. They're maybe a product manager. So this line between who's an agency and who's a client, who's the designer and who's the client, is very much shifted. And for that reason, I always say this, it takes 2 to tango now. It's a very different relationship between agency and client. So before we dive into some solutions potentially about working with difficult clients that could be called maybe an asshole, who are we actually talking about? So we're going to play a little game. I know it's early in the morning. I know we're maybe some of us are hungover, maybe a little bit tired. But let's talk about the asshole. So who are we talking about here? And while the work that we've been doing in the creative industry has changed tremendously since the 1950s, in a lot of cases, unfortunately, the churn and burn model has not. And some of these characters might be familiar with you. So, show of hands. Number one, the client that delivers their feedback at 5 p.m. on Friday before a 9 a.m. deadline on Monday. Anyone? Does this sound familiar to anyone? Wow, so few. Like when I said this over in the States, it was like a full room of hands. It's like, yeah, this is happening to me right now. Okay, how about this one? This is the pseudo client, the account director, who plans a 6-month project for 6 weeks. Anyone sound familiar? Or the other asshole, and this one's a little bit close to home now, truth be told, like even the outfit is a bit fucking similar. The creative director who takes all the credit for the work of the junior designers and presents the ideas as his own. Is this familiar to anyone? 1 or 2 hands. It's such a great audience today. No, this is great. But some of these are the asshole. The agency asshole or the creative industry asshole. And what does this have to do with clients? What does it have to do with great work? Why should I give a shit about this? We're going to have a lovely talk today. We're going to have a great breakfast, and you can all leave and forget everything I say. And you say, well, we've been doing this for a long time. You know, the creative industry has been churn and burn. You know, the clients are difficult, but who gives a shit? You know, they're paying us plenty of money. Who cares? I'm going to give you a reason why you should care about this, and why it's more important than ever that you have great projects, you have great culture, and obviously all of this leads to great work and great business. I'll start by saying, this is not a peace and love session. This is not about holding hands and saying we're going to be pictures of moral purity and do great work. In fact, the opposite is true, because I care about making face-melting work. That's important, right? I care a lot about things like awards, getting our team recognized for great work. This is me winning an award very recently. And I care about this. I care about the Benjamins. I live in Los Angeles. You know how much the fucking rent is in Los Angeles? I care a lot about this. And for all of these 3 reasons, if you want to do great work, if you care about awards, if you want to make shitloads of money, it really matters, because great work needs great people. And right now, the creative industry is more fragmented than ever. People are working in-house, they're working at agencies, and they've more choice than ever. They can fuck off to somewhere like this. They can sit in a nap pod all day and do awesome work and not be burnt out. And some of the most interesting work from a design perspective is definitely coming from here. I'm not an advocate for nap pods. I think the whole thing's a bit silly, but these are great companies. And on the flip side, great people also have access to websites like this, where you can see, I'm going to try a fancy feature here. Look at this. It's quite advanced. Poor management and awful working hours. A shell of its former self. This is a great one. Just terrible experience. Like, these are fine places to work. And of course, this is from Glassdoor. And now, more than ever, people A, have choice, and B, they can see where it sucks to work. So being nice matters. Having great clients matter. Having a great relationship with a client. Making meaningful work matters. Because great work runs on one currency, and that's great people. And when those people leave, clients, good or bad, won't be far behind. So I want to share 5 things with you that I think will help lead, I would say, a more fruitful partnership with even the most difficult clients. And I'm going to start by saying the client, if you will, and the client can be an internal stakeholder too, for those working in in-house teams. is really not such a bad character after all. I started this talk by saying asshole clients, and actually there's very few. I've only, I think, ever worked with one asshole client. There's difficult clients, but most of the time, the client just cares about things like keeping their job, producing great work, staying on deadline, keeping somewhat within their budget, loosely within the budget, and then to a lesser extent up here at the top you can see family and sex and things like that that are much less important to a client. But by and large, clients really just need good guidance. And the first and most important thing I would say is giving clear direction and getting clear direction from your client is the most important thing. And it starts with one thing, which is the briefing. And one of the things that I see again and again that leads to the most friction with a client is there's no written briefing for a project. We used to work with a client or a creative director in New York, and if you wanted to change the button color of a banner, write a fucking brief. His motto was, no brief, no work. And he was adamant about it. I think he probably had this tattooed in his ass. He was so adamant about it. So when you don't have a briefing, of course, you get into this. This is what I call the spaghetti process, where you start the work over here on the left-hand side. You don't have a brief, they kind of meander around the path of loss for several days, weeks, maybe even months, and then you emerge somewhere around here after throwing lots more resources and money, and you're totally fucked. So this is the spaghetti process, and is this vaguely familiar to some people, maybe? Yeah. It's fun sometimes, but not on the right-hand side. So I don't need to bore you with the details of this, but just writing a brief for any assignment, doing a rebrief when a client sends you a brief, sending the rebrief to the client saying, this is what we're going to do. Do you agree to this, please, in writing? Now let's get started. So the other side of getting clear direction is feedback and setting the ground rules with your client for getting feedback or your internal team. And too often, this next screen is actually a real email, by the way. This is an email from a client that I can't name because I'll be sued, because I live in America and everyone likes to sue everyone. But this is, you know, we've all got feedback like this. It needs to be more impactful, bolder, louder, faster, harder. What the fuck does that mean? I don't know. Give me a fucking example. What do you mean? So we often talk about giving feedback being important, but giving constructive feedback is very important. And setting up something like this with a client in advance and not starting work until this is done. And then on our side, on the designer side, especially the junior designer side, I have to show this slide. It's a bit condescending, but it's something that I think some of us miss sometimes. I'm going to show you two very secret tools that I'm going to blow your minds about taking feedback when a client gives it to you. I would advise everyone to use these. Pen and paper. Take notes. All right, number 2, no big reveals. So traditionally, we know the ad agencies would have a creative director stand on stage presenting an idea, but of course the idea wasn't necessarily his idea. It might actually be a whole team of people working on this, and the client may or may not like this idea because they've been sitting in a dark cave for 6 months. And this process used to work a little bit like this. We'd have a kickoff, we'd have 6 months, 6 weeks, whatever, of silence. They'd present something finished, and the client says, I don't like it. It's shit. Start again. And then they'd go back to the start. Where in truth, to engage a client, especially a difficult client, something like this, where you review progress every 2 weeks with your client, is absolutely critical, especially for something like a long-term project, like a website, or building an app, something very, very complex. This is absolutely critical. Number 3, stop fucking micromanaging. Does this character look familiar? This is the hovering art director. It could equally be the hovering client. To the clients, I would say, you hired someone to do a job that you can't. It's in our manifesto. let them do their job. To the creative directors and the art directors, you hired someone to do something you cannot, let them do their fucking job. And I guess I'm wearing a suit, so I'm relatively convincing, but if you needed no more convincing of that, I would say, let's read this quote. I don't believe in hiring people who are smarter than me. Who's this quote by? Well, I think that's pretty convincing, right? So one of the things that we've got around this is running our teams autonomously, giving people the power to present in front of clients and not having a pyramid-style leadership, which of course just sucks. Next up, now this one might seem a little bit, oh, it's a picture of moral purity again. It's like, it's doing the right thing. And give credit where credit is due. Now, of course you should do this anyway for all the moral reasons, which I could kind of give less of two shits about the moral reasons, but actually this is extremely important for business reasons, for your client relationship. Why? Well, when you think about how presentations used to go in the past, a man or a woman in a suit would stand up like this, saying, I'm very important, this is my idea, and you are going to listen to me. And of course, the whole team, like we saw earlier, are all hidden behind the curtain. Like, who knows? Who knows who they are? They're hidden. And sure, it's great to have a salesman on stage selling something, but what happens when they don't know why you chose that specific font? Because they can't answer the question. They're not a type designer, or they're not an interface designer. One of the things that we've learned over the years is that putting the salesman to present work is a recipe for fucking disaster. What you need to do is get the experts in the room. And who are the experts? Well, the experts are the team. And you know what else we do? We put the clients in the team. And by doing this, this ensures that the team is working together as an actual team. Don't forget, the client is also an expert. They might even be more of an expert than you. In fact, they probably are more of an expert than you. And your job is to bring out the knowledge that they have. So this little game of spot the client. So we know here, this is another spot the client. Is it this dapper man in the middle? No, it's not. It's the man in the shabby chic polo shirt is actually the client in this instance. And here, another client. This one is hiding behind his laptop thinking that he wasn't going to be photographed. Let your team shine. Your client will thank you. Put the experts with the experts and drop the middleman. So I have one last client tip to share with you, and this is the rarest of all, and this is the real asshole client. This is the hardest one to deal with. And there's only one way to deal with this client, but first, who are they? Well, maybe it's the one that's disrespectful to your team, that demeans your team, that's abusive. Maybe they just deliver projects that burn out teams, that lead to high turnover of your staff. Or maybe they are the ones that expect weekend work, where it's just taken for granted. This type of client is what we call the true asshole client. And sure, you can have discussions with them, as you should, but at some point, there really is, for these types of clients, only one solution. You gotta fire them. So ladies and gentlemen, that was a little insight into doing great work without being an asshole and working with clients who are generally never assholes, except for maybe once in every 10 years. I want to leave you with this thought. The creative industry is a very small place. Whether you're a client, whether you're a designer, whether you're an art director, the flow of people in and out of agency to client is more frequent than ever. What goes around comes around, and karma is a bitch. So in the words of Anthony Burrell, work hard and be nice to people, whether you're a designer or a client, because you never know who's going to be sitting on the same side of the table as you. And in the words of Eric Spiekerman, don't be an asshole. Thank you guys very much.